on my Area 51 line. You're on the air. Hello.
Welcome to the Blondes and Booze Paranormal Podcast, where what you've known as reality will be shattered by the truth. Krista and Brandy will lift the veil from your eyes, revealing what has either been hidden or denied you for eons.
Hey, happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, everyone. Happy Thursday.
Finally here, man. This has been the longest week ever.
It has been the longest day for me.
Has it?
Yeah, I got to tell everybody what happened because this is just how my life's going right now. And I looked at my schedule. And so I got up at, 4:30 this morning, and I made sure I was out the door by 5:30. I got to work at 6 and I clocked in, and then come to figure out I don't go to work till 9:30. So, so I can't clock in, I can't work, and I've already drank my Monster coffee. So I couldn't go, back home, which is another, 20-minute drive back home, and then possibly take a nap. And it didn't work. Yeah. So I was like, well, there's Thursday.
Yeah, you've had a day like I have.
Right. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I said, oh my God.
That sounds like something you would do on a Monday.
I was just anxious to go to work or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anybody else out there, watching or in chat land or anything, but I mean, have you ever just woke up and thought you were late for work and it was actually still the same day? You hadn't even slept overnight yet. And it was like the same day. That's me.
Oh, wow. That's you, huh?
That's me. I do that quite a bit.
That's too funny. Way too funny. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. And we've got a good show here planned for you. We have Miguel Ramirez from Sasquatch Theory, which we're excited about. So that's going to be a good show. But before that, we've got something to talk about, don't we, Brandy?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Same talk. We're going to kill y'all with this until you show up. Buy your tickets.
Where's the
I know. Let's sell this event out and we'll stop talking about it. I'm just saying. Let's just sell it out. All of it. Yeah. Every bit of it.
Yeah. And I got the wrong one up, and I don't know where my new banner went that's got the extras on it. So just keep talking, Brandy. I'll find it.
Oh, so anyway, this is the Crossing Realms Conference happening September 19th and 20th of 2025. You heard it right, 2025. It's the one to be at. We've got fantabulous. I love that word, fantabulous. Fantastic speakers that are going to be there. We have speakers Friday night at the meet and greet. We have speakers on Saturday. Our ghost hunt, unfortunately, is sold out for Saturday night, but we still have a lot of activities, a lot of vendors to see, all kinds of stuff going. Marilyn Bast is going to be doing a gallery reading. We have vendor spots available. All this information will be on our Eventbrite under Crossing Realms Conference, everyone. Now, Mr. Gary Spikes has it at the top of the chat, but if you're not in chat and you're listening to it on another platform, go to Eventbrite, look under Crossing Realms Conference in Richmond, Missouri. You'll find all the information there.
Absolutely. And speaking of the conference, we added a couple people, as a lot of you guys know now. Dale Boswell is one of them. Texas friend Danielle Stedman. And then our buddy, Martin Groves, we added him too. So yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good one. And speaking of the conference, Miguel Ramirez, he's our guest tonight. So I'm going to just get rid of this and I'm going to bring him on up. Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey,
doing
man.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. We're so glad to have you.
Me too.
Yeah, I watch your shows faithfully.
Well, I appreciate that.
I do.
Oh yeah,
And
you should have heard her. She was like, "Hey, Brandy, listen, you've got to watch this. You got to watch
I
this."
turned Brandy onto your channel, so
Yeah, she kept sending me episodes of what you had done, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, there we go."
well, I like the fact that you actually do go out, you know, and you're open minded too on a lot of things. So I appreciate that. And then, you know, Brandy and I are Missouri girls too, and you're local, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that makes it a lot better.
Yeah, it sure does. So we definitely appreciate you coming on. How did you like get started? Did you think 10 years ago that you'd be a YouTuber?
No, absolutely not. And I've had a bunch of strange experiences throughout my life and just kind of brushed it off and put it in the back of my mind. And it wasn't until I had my Sasquatch encounters that I went deep into the rabbit hole to figure out more. And yeah, I've always been into Bigfoot and it's always excited me. But the paranormal stuff that I've experienced kind of shut me down and made me feel alone because it was just terrifying. But I was always into Bigfoot. I found it to be very fascinating to know that there could be unknown creatures on this planet. And I'm really into wildlife, but the more I got into Bigfoot and started learning about it, it all tied back into the paranormal thing. So the very thing that I try to get away from, it seemed to have sucked me back in somehow.
Mm-hmm. What are you talking about, like the paranormal side of things?
Well, just thinking that Bigfoot was an unknown creature, I kind of got away from the paranormal and then moved on to Bigfoot, and somehow I got pulled back into the paranormal because, as you guys know, there's like supernatural things going on with the cryptid world and things that are reported from people.
Right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, Brandy and I, when we started doing this, we started with ghost. However, we were always a believer in Bigfoot, but we also were big believers that it was flesh and blood. That was it. You know, it was just this unknown ape creature out there until we started going out to the woods ourselves and, you know, like seeing orbs and things like that we couldn't explain. And, you know, there's a lot more to these creatures than flesh and blood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's been quite a path for us. We enjoy it, and like I said, I appreciate the fact that you go out and do all of this too. So let me ask you, how did you get the killing fields? Let's just start talking about that, because I think those are fascinating. Like, what happened there, and why is it called the killing fields?
Okay, so after I had my encounters, I started the channel and I made a few episodes and started interviewing other people, and then I got in contact with David from the Killing Fields at the Current River Conservation Area in Missouri, and he said he was having some Bigfoot activity, so I contacted him, and he said, I got all this stuff going on here. I'm hearing wood knocks, whoops. I keep finding things dead in my fields as far as deer. And he sent me some photos of like deers with their necks twisted and their legs broken. And I mean, he was finding like turkeys in the middle of the fields. And I went out there and witnessed it. But he's like, you got to get out here right now. And I asked him, well, would it be all right if I record this and document it? He said, absolutely. He's like, you get out here right now. You can record whatever you want. So I went out there, and I never made a documentary or anything like that before. So I just had this little camcorder, and I went out there, and he told me about everything that happened, and it was all on the fly. Like, it was my first time really ever hearing anything, and I set up the camera, and then he took me out into the killing fields and showed me where everything happened. But whenever we went out there and we were driving through the fields, there was just piles of bones out there. And apparently he called the conservation agents and people from the state about the activity that was going on. And apparently they knew about these creatures. The game warden said that they have photos of them, and they would use this byproduct of beer, I think it's called like mash or mesh, to get photos of these things. So apparently the game wardens at the Current River Conservation Area know all about them, and they call them pods. And they said that there's multiple pods out there in the area, and I guess that's just their code word. But there was definitely a lot going on there. Yeah, it was a creepy area. When you go there, you get this heavy feeling like you're just being watched, and there's just so much forest out there that I mean, even if Bigfoot didn't exist, you would feel creeped out there.
Yeah, totally understand that. And you've spent a lot of nights camping there too, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I haven't seen Bigfoot, but I have experienced the orbs that he was talking about, because he claimed that he was seeing like these yellowish orange colored orbs moving through the fields. And it was the same thing that I seen here in my property whenever I was having Bigfoot activity. And I seen them several times there. And the first time that I encountered the orbs on his property, I was out there with another research group called the Half Inch Wrench Crew, and they're from Missouri as well. And we smelled something horrible. And at that time, David claimed that he was losing calves out there, newborn calves, and we were keeping an eye out in case we found one of them. But close to the campground, we just smelled this rotten, horrible smell. I mean, it smelled like death. And then we'd walk a few more feet and it'd disappear, and then it'd come back, and then that would continue. But it seemed to happen only around the campground. And that night we were down in the woods, probably about, I would say, like 150 yards away from the RV. And I mean, it was close to where we smelled that. And we saw this orange ball floating up the ridge going towards our camp. And my buddy Adam said, "Do you see that?" I said, "Yeah." So I tried to film it. We both tried to film it, but we couldn't get it on film. And it was in the same exact area that we were smelling that putrid smell. So we don't know what the orbs are or if it has anything to do with Bigfoot. But I mean, from my experience, if you're having cryptid activity, you will see these orbs. And I've noticed that in other areas where cryptids have been reported, people see orbs, and it's just hard to know if it's tied in.
Sure, absolutely. So Brandy and I, we used to go to Land Between the Lakes and do investigating out there. And she and I have both witnessed the orbs that you talk about. And there was about a group of 10 of us, and it was the middle of January, and we were all sitting around the campfire. And actually Martin Groves was there telling his encounter there, what happened at Land Between the Lakes to him. And at different times, several of us, we would see these orbs floating through like the woods, and there was nobody else out there. It's the middle of winter, late at night. There was nobody there. And it was kind of misty too. You know, it's just nasty night to be out, honestly.
Oh gosh, it was so nasty that later on in the evening, it started sleeting and icing is how cold it was.
Yeah. And so, you know, like, Brandy saw different orbs, just everybody did. And sometimes we would see the same one, sometimes we wouldn't. But the one I actually saw that has stuck out, and I'll never forget it. It was a reddish orangish, and it was the size of a beach ball. I kid you not. And so that night we were hearing, you know, like I said, we were around the campfire, and we would hear like something coming up to our camp, you know, with like the leaves, but we would shine the flashlight and there wasn't anything there. There was no squirrel, no deer, no people, and we were all in camp, you know, so it's just a lot of weirdness. And I think those orbs, you know, I think it is some sort of like cryptid. I really do. That's my opinion, but you know.
Yeah, for sure. Before I had my encounters, I think it was a few weeks before I encountered the Sasquatch on my land, I got whistled at by the Sasquatch, and there was 3 distinct whistles, one to my left, and then a few seconds later, right in front of me, and then a few seconds later to my right. And I mean, there were loud whistles. I mean, it sounded very, I thought I was being spied on, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. So I went back up there about an hour later, right when it was getting dark. And when I arrived at that spot, right where I heard the whistles, I see 2 orange orbs floating through the woods, about 3 or 4 feet off the ground, basketball size. They were like an orange, yellow color. And I thought it was like people with lanterns or cell phones walking through the woods. But I got this like overwhelming feeling of fear, like, don't go near them. I mean, I just got a feeling of dread. And then I didn't even know what it was. Later on, after I did more research, after I had my encounters, I heard people talking about these lights in the woods. And I thought, whoa, I've seen those lights in the woods. I guess it's connected with Bigfoot activity, because I ended up having Bigfoot encounters in that same area, along, like with a bunch of experiences as well. So I feel like it's tied in. I can't say for sure. There's a video online from St. Clair, Missouri, off of the Merrimack River, and it's these UFO paranormal researchers, and they filmed these lights in the woods. They turn on, I guess they had strobe lights, and they were shining the strobe, and these lights would just turn on in the woods.
Yeah.
I commented on their video, and I told them that's Sasquatch, and I think they kind of rolled their eyes, you know, being like UFO researchers, but I think that's what it is, because in that same area they were doing UFO research. There's been all kinds of Bigfoot reports. So to me, it screamed out Bigfoot, but in their minds they were thinking it's UFO activity. But maybe it's connected. I have no evidence of that, but
well, we don't either. But I'm with you. You know, like, you know, and Brandy can attest too. Last time we were at the LBL, we were filming a documentary with Greg Ogles, and he believes, him and another friend of ours, like they seen like these gold shimmery lights, and they believe it's a portal. It was a portal.
Really? Yeah, I've had that theory as well before, that maybe the orbs are like some type of portal, like them coming into our realm, I guess, or our dimension.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got a couple questions. When you heard the whistles, did it sound like it was from the same Sasquatch, or did it sound like multiples?
No, it sounded like multiple ones. There was 3 different individuals, and I think they were just crossing the area. Like, it's a major deer trail. All the deer and turkey cross through there. And I think I threw them off because instead of walking around like I normally do, I was coming back from town in my vehicle. And then I remembered, like, oh yeah, I need to check the trail camera. So I slammed my brakes and stopped at the end of the driveway, which is like a quarter mile long, and it's all forested. But I think that threw them off, because typically I would drive all the way through and go home and park the driveway and go inside, or, you know, and walk back up on foot. But this time I just, like, boom, stopped the vehicle and got out. And I think that threw them off, because I don't know, in my mind, they have like this routine, like they watch us as for entertainment and they know what we do. And I think that time it threw them off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I keep thinking about what you're saying about the mutilated animals. Were they half eaten, mostly eaten, or, I mean, were they kind of like picked on, like they wanted certain things off the animal? Because I know, like us, I mean, we love the backstraps of a deer, so yeah, that's going to be your number one. But I mean, did you see anything that could point to they have a preference?
Nothing I could say for sure. One of the photos, it looked like it went in from like the hind end of the deer, but I've seen that with coyotes as well. They'll start at the hind end because it's the easiest entrance to get into the animal. But the twisted neck, it was twisted like a Twizzler. I mean, it was
around it, like, yeah.
You can definitely tell something twisted it several times. And he had like videos on his trail cameras of like deers with their front leg broken. And I thought that was unusual, because whenever I was having Bigfoot activity here, there would be a doe that would come out of the woods and just stand there in the yard, and her front leg was broken, and she would look behind her. And then she'd look at me, and then she'd look behind her back into the woods. So I was like, man, something's hunting her down. At the time, I didn't think anything of it until I got out to the killing fields and he showed me those videos. And then I thought, okay. And I've heard people say that too. And people would report the Sasquatch would break their necks or break their front leg and come back later and kill them off.
Wow.
Well, what surprised me though is when you're talking about the turkeys, and then when you get into a dense forested area, you know, and you're trying to get these turkeys that aren't exactly out in the open, I guess. So, I mean, we know that they have speed, but agility, it sounds like they have massive agility that a lot of people don't count on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And David, when he gave me the tour, he showed me these rocks that were like in the fields and on his trails. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. Like, it just went right over my head. He was like, I find these rocks out in my field. And I was just like, okay, you're finding rocks. But then later on, I met up with a guy named Mike, and he's from like the Cape Girardeau area. He's a Bigfoot researcher. And they were showing me these rocks. They're like, lift up that rock. So I'd lift it up, and there'd be fresh green grass and leaves underneath it. Like it wouldn't be bare dirt. And they're like, something moved that rock. And I was like, oh, okay. And then we started looking around, and we noticed more rocks like that. And then I was like, oh, okay, that's what David was talking about. Like, because, in my mind, it's like, how are you going to notice like a rock being moved like in hundreds of acres? But he really did. He knew his land very well. Like I could go out in the middle of his woods and push over like a rotten tree, and he'd drive up and be like, huh, something pushed that tree over. And I was like, wow, this guy is very observant. Like he really knows his land.
Yeah, most definitely. And, like a lot of the farmers, though, they have to, because, they have livestock, and so they have to know anything's weird, or, they're missing an animal, they're fencing or whatever, even the water, notice if they're drinking water,
Yeah, absolutely. So I learned a lot out there, and yeah, it's just a spooky area. When I get out there, I think, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to go and research this area. But when you go there, you just feel so small. You feel like you're just swimming out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's like, where do I start? Like, I'm not even going to put a dent in this place. But I mean, the best thing I can do is just spend time out there. And yeah, on another trip, the half-inch wrench crew was out there, and Adam brought his dad and his brother. And right when it got dark, we saw these orange orbs floating around the fields. We were in the woods, but we can kind of see the fields through the woods because it's wintertime, and you can just see them floating around. We had to call David and ask him, are you out there driving your side-by-side? Nope, I'm inside. And it's like, oh, okay. Something weird's going on.
Wow. Just all kinds of weirdness.
Yeah, I know. Let's talk about your first experience seeing a Bigfoot. I mean, were you looking for it, or what exactly were you doing? I'm always interested to know what people were doing when they have an experience, especially if they weren't looking.
Okay, my first experience, or my first encounter, was a partial sighting. I thought it was a black bear at the time, but I was working at a meat processing plant, and I left work that day to go to an area called Merrimack Springs. There's some state land around there. And when I got there on the backside, I got to this cliff, and it's a really remote area. It's like the backside of the conservation area. But anyways, I parked my car there, and I was scouting out a new deer hunting area. And I walked out in front of my car, and I was looking off the cliff, and you could see the entire state land, and Merrimack Springs is just right over the hill, so it's on the backside. But anyways, I just was standing there looking at the river, and I turned back around and walked towards my vehicle, and I see this black creature running through the woods.
Wow.
Yeah, it looked like a chimpanzee on steroids moving through the woods. And this was September 14th, 2018. I remember that because it was the day before opening bow season in Missouri. But finally, when I got a good look at the creature, this is a tree, it hid behind the tree like this, slower than that. It was slow motion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was jet black, and tapered off like a Christmas tree, but that's all I saw. And I was like, man, did I just see a black bear? That's pretty smart, black bear, to hide behind an oak tree and just disappear. There's some intelligence going on there. And I didn't really think anything of it and just kind of brushed it off. I went back the next morning to hunt that area, and I just got the heebie-jeebies. Man, there's a giant black bear out here. I don't want to hunt. So I never got out of the vehicle and hunted. I was that spooked. Even if I didn't think it was Bigfoot. I thought it was a bear. So even just the thought of a bear being in that area, I was like, I'm not going to go blind, walk in the woods at nighttime with a giant black bear in the woods.
Yeah.
But yeah, later on, I thought more about it, and I had an encounter with a juvenile Sasquatch, and he did the same thing. He ran on all fours, got up and hid behind an oak tree in slow motion. So I was thinking, okay, that's the same thing I seen behind Merrimack Springs, except this juvenile, he popped back out And then I saw him, and he had no idea I was there. He heard something and he wasn't sure what it was, but he was kind of looking around, and he ended up seeing me, and his eyes just bulged out of his head. And then he shot back behind the tree, and then that was it. He was gone. But the juvenile, he was probably about 4.5 feet tall, jet black, fully covered in hair. Even his face was completely covered in hair or fur, whatever you want to call it, hair. And you could see these big white eyeballs, and he had black pupils. Yeah, he was a handsome little guy, like a beautiful creature. I mean, it was like looking at a baby deer, except a Sasquatch, or like a baby gorilla. You know, it was cute.
How close were you to him?
I was like 20 or 30. I'd say yards. I want to say feet, but maybe yards. Let's just say yards. I'm not really sure. Yeah. But I mean, it was pretty close
though.
Yeah, it was close enough to where I can see like the hair follicles blowing in the wind.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. It was an amazing experience. I mean, I remember everything vividly to this day, and I'll never forget it. I mean, whenever he stepped out behind that tree, everything like went in slow motion. And I mean, it was a magical experience for sure. Yeah. But what really got me was his conical head. And I've taken so many reports. And when I started this channel, I thought for sure that I would interview someone who has seen a Sasquatch with an elongated head like this. And I haven't, still to this day, which blows my mind. And I still feel isolated because nobody else has reported this. Like when I interview people, they say, oh yeah, it had a conical shaped head. And I ask them all the time, like, how much higher did it stick up, like above the eyebrows? And everyone says not very much, like slightly. It was slightly crested, but this juvenile, like, it had like an elongated head. Like it went up. Yeah. Yeah. But maybe it's because he was little and maybe he'll grow into it. But it was like a side profile of Nefertiti, but it came to a point at the top.
Wow. That's pretty amazing, honestly. You know, that area, it's south of St. James, right? That area you're talking? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in between St. James, Stillville, and Cuba.
Yep. I know exactly where you're talking about there. And that's actually where the Merrimack River starts, right there.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah, the spring from Merrimack Springs pours into the Merrimack River. But above that, the Merrimack is like almost like a creek. I think it comes out from like Cook Station or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. Somewhere down in there. You know, I have a friend who seen a creature cross the Merrimack, and that was in Zombie Road, Wildwood area.
Really?
Yeah. So that was pretty interesting. And he said he swears it swam across the Merrimack. Him and his daughter saw it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And that's, you know, it just amazes me because it's so close to St. Louis. There's a lot of residential around there too, you know?
Yeah. Is there anywhere I can find the report from Wildwood, Missouri? I'd love to hear about that.
Well, I don't know if he wrote, I don't know if he ever got a report, but I can connect you with the guy that it happened to.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Him and his daughter are friends. So yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think Brandy, are you better?
I'm trying to. I'm still got a little bit of a lag.
Huh. I don't know. It's one of those nights for you.
I know. Anytime we talk to somebody really, really, really good.
The same thing happens to me, so don't feel alone.
What do you think about one more question on the killing fields, and then we can change subject. Do you think there's any dogmen around that area, you know, too, with like the bones and stuff?
Yeah, we've talked about that. I think David doesn't want to think about it, but there's been a lot of dogman reports from that area of Missouri. And yeah, I do feel like perhaps it's dogman activity. And I don't know. I mean, you guys talked about seeing the lights at LBL, so he sees the lights there quite often, and maybe it has something to do with dogman. My suspicion is if the Sasquatch are coming from these orbs, so are the other cryptid creatures.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we have a friend, Greg Ogles, who he also is a documentarian, and he actually had interactions with the orbs. which I find fascinating. Like they were intelligent. You remember him talking about that, Brandy?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So
That they were actually reacting to him.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, we've never tried to interact with them, and I'm not so sure I would really want to.
No, I don't know. I mean, because we don't really know what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm getting a glitch again. I'll be right back.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that was the feeling I got from the orbs, was that it had some type of intelligence to them. The way they were moving through the woods, like, I don't know, it seemed like artificial intelligence, some type of technology, or driven by, like, I don't know, spiritual means.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Let's I know that, was it last year that you went to Alaska?
Yeah, it was in July.
In July. How long were you there? Can you talk about some of your experiences there?
I think I was there for like 5 or 6 days. We didn't really have too many experiences. When we went on the mountain, we did find a lot of tree breaks, and one of the guys claimed that he heard some strange vocalizations, but I wasn't there whenever he heard it. But I mean, Alaska is so immense that we didn't even put a dent in the place, not even the area that we were in. I mean, you would look at like a mountain and you just see all kinds of woods in there, or forest. Mm-hmm. But then whenever you'd go, like you'd drive or whatever, if you were on a boat, like you would go for like hours and hours and hours and still not get there. And once you get there, it's just ginormous. It's like, wow, that little side of the mountain is like a whole nother world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can only imagine how Alaska is. I've been to Colorado and places like that, that also have the mountains, but I don't think they're quite as big as the ones in Alaska, for sure.
Yeah, they're huge. And that feeling that I was talking about at the killing fields, that heavy, I don't know, that strange feeling, you get that everywhere in Alaska. It's almost like a predator feeling. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, like a predator type feeling. You got a predator out there. And maybe it's your subconscious too, because like there's grizzly bears and things like that too. Because I know you guys came across a grizzly too, didn't you?
Yeah, we had a grizzly bear try to come into camp, but it was just a little bear. But when I saw him, I was thinking like, oh man, it's a mama with cubs. But thankfully, it was just old enough. It seemed like the mother kicked it out, so it was on its own, and it was hungry, and it smelled the bacon from that morning. But we made all kinds of racket, and it went its own way.
Yeah, good deal. Are you ready to go back to Alaska?
I would like to return. I mean, I had a lot of fun there, and it's a beautiful area.
How long was the flight?
The flight was miserable. It was like, I don't know, anywhere from like 6 to 8 hours.
Oh yeah, that'd be awful.
Yeah, it is. And Alaska Airlines, like, it's a bumpy ride.
Yeah.
Like when you land, it feels like you crashed.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
No thanks, Brandy. We are not flying to Alaska.
Yeah, there's that video too, of people on the Alaskan Airlines, and the door just flies off, and they're just sitting on the plane with no door. Oh, and that was right before I got on the flight. I was like, oh man.
No kidding. That's crazy. That is definitely crazy. Are you back, Brandy? You think you're a little...
I'm just going to have to deal with it.
Gotcha. Riley Ron says, can we ask questions? Absolutely. Put your questions in all caps. And then we see them, we'll ask Miguel. So we hear a lot of people talk about like gifting and things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I definitely think it works if you're having Bigfoot activity. I mean, if you go out there just blindly into the woods, I mean, anything can get it. But whenever the Sasquatch were here, I was testing them by leaving them gifts. And they were doing the same for me. Like, I would find mushrooms and in spots that I would like leave my stuff at. Like, for example, I'd go walk in the property and I'd put my phone down in a certain spot. Well, they'd like put a mushroom there in that exact spot. Things like that, or a feather in my chair. But one day I went out there right before it got dark. I mean, it was almost dark time, and I set 2 jars of peanut butter down in the gifting spot that I had chosen, and I recorded it. I went back in the morning and the lids were just sitting there. So I was like, okay, if this was like a raccoon, like it wouldn't just leave the lids there. Like it would tear up and it'd be kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty amazing. One time I went to Merrimack Springs, I went trout fishing, and whenever I was cleaning my fish, the game warden came up behind me, and I was like, oh boy, because I didn't know if I did something wrong. And she's like, hey, I confiscated these fish from somebody that got too many fish. She's like, do you want them? And they were like in a plastic bag, and they were kind of dried up. I was like, I don't really want them. But then I thought in my mind, like, ooh, I'm going to gift those to the Sasquatch. So whenever I got home that day, it was like 4:30. I had this little basket, and I put the fish in the basket right at the edge of the wood line, right at the edge of the yard. And I went back like 30 minutes, maybe an hour, and the fish were gone. I was like, wow. So I don't know if it was quick, but that was a spot where they would come up to, like they would come up from the woods right at nighttime. You could hear them walking around. And I got a story like where I had my window open one night and I could hear this commotion going on outside. At the time, I thought it was like a chimpanzee being ripped apart. Later on, I learned that it was like a fox in distress call or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it sounded pretty wicked. And I got my spotlight out and I'm shining it, and I see a fox come out of the tall grass out from the woods, and he went through the yard. And then the whole time this vocalization's going off, and then another fox comes out of the woods, and he's like real low to the ground, like almost like he's crawling. And then a few seconds later, a few minutes later, another fox comes out, and then that distress call's still going on the whole time. So I'm like, what the heck's going on? Then I hear like this commotion to my left, and it sounded like a big group of deer ran up out of the woods, like shh. So I shine the spotlight over there, and I see all these eyes, and they're about 3 or 4 feet off the ground. They're like a yellowish green color, and they're swaying back and forth like this, because I'm hitting the spotlight and I just can't see what they are. Like the spotlight's penetrating, like it's not penetrating the woods, it's just lighting up the outside of the woods, and all I see is eye shine. But in my mind, I'm like, that's got to be deer. And I thought, like, if that's Sasquatch, the eyes would be way higher off the ground, because I just had encounters with them not long ago. So I'm pretty paranoid. I'm thinking everything's Bigfoot. I'm like, oh. But anyways, as soon as I think that, like, that can't be Sasquatch, the eyes are too low to the ground. One of the sets of eyes goes up to about, I would say like 10 or 13 feet. I don't want to exaggerate, but it was ginormous. Like it was really tall, but it went up like an elevator, like, and then I knew exactly what it was. I was like, holy crap, they're out there. Like, what am I going to do? There's no way I want to go out there. When you know they're outside, like true terror sets in, like you are terrorized, like with fear, like you don't want to go out there. Even if you're like, a diehard researcher, when you know they're out there at nighttime, you're not going to go out there and like approach them and be like, hey.
Exactly. But we totally get it. You know, like I said, you know, like the LBL, what really creeped me out a couple times is we've been to the alleged kill site, and, you know, you want to talk about a weird feeling of being watched. So I totally get what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, for sure. You guys are brave for going out there and researching that area.
We go in teams. It's not just the two of us.
Yeah.
Not just the two of us.
Go in teams, heavily armed, and hope for the best. Hope for God's protection.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've even gotten like at cemeteries. There's 237 cemeteries out there at the LBL, and one cemetery in particular, it was broad daylight, and Brandy's just running her recorder, and we got like a door slamming. We're out in the middle of a cemetery. There's no cars, there's no nothing. So there's a lot of weirdness there, not just on the cryptid side of things.
That's good to know. I've heard the metal door slamming several times, and I describe it as like someone shutting the hatch to a tank.
Yeah. We have it on recording. I'll have Brandy send it to you.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And the areas where I've heard the metal bangs, like there's no metal out there. That's the strange part.
Exactly. And that's how this sounded, didn't it, Brandy?
Right. It did. It definitely had like a creaking of a door too. Like you could, it's just opening.
Yeah. Martin Groves told us that he thinks was possibly maybe a portal opening or closing.
Yeah, very well could be. I thought about that.
So, we just don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah, but
Have you
we also have the like the vibration of the ground too for no apparent reason with the low sounding. It's weird. It's I don't even know how to explain it, but it's just like a low roar type, but it's underground and you can feel it vibrate.
Really, I've never experienced that. That's incredible. Maybe it's infrasound, or maybe like there's something going on underneath the ground. And I've theorized that these things are coming from the underworld or underground caves, but it's hard to say. I know, like in Missouri, there's caves everywhere underneath us, and the same with Kentucky. Like there's Mammoth Cave, and I've noticed that in just Sasquatch hot areas, like there's ginormous cave systems underneath the ground. But the only way they'd be able to go in and out of the earth is like spiritually, because some of the caves aren't very big. Like I get the big ones, but those are like touristy areas, like where people, constantly go through. But I don't know.
Right. Yep, absolutely. So have you been out in the woods and heard anything what's like similar to the Sierra Sounds or anything like that?
I've just heard screams that sound like something off Jurassic Park. And a lot of people try to say that it was a bobcat or mountain lion. They just don't understand like the power behind these screams. It was horrific. And I've also heard whoops so loud that they sound like the tornado siren mixed with like a sonic boom, like super incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've heard the classic whoop sounds like whoop, whoop, like what you hear on Sasquatch Chronicles or the Sierra Sounds. I've heard that. And I've heard what I think was a dog man whenever I was around 11 or 12 years old. I was sitting in my bedroom. I had the window open. I was watching TV. I think I was watching like Family Guy or something, and I was on my computer. And I think it was like around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And something howled out there like a werewolf. I mean, it was like a werewolf on steroids going through like a PA system. Like it was powerful. Just like, I don't know if you've ever been to Pops in Sauget, Illinois, like how loud the music is. It was like that. Like you could feel it in your body.
Right through you. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So those are, I'll go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, what do you think of like the infrasound and people getting zapped and things like that? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure. I've never experienced it before, so I don't know. But I've interviewed people that claim they've had like Mindspeak or telepathy, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And I've interviewed people that claim they were out there in these Bigfoot areas, or they've been having sightings, and their vision gets really blurred. Like they'll take off their glasses, like thinking their glasses are fogged up. Sure. And like both people are like, "Hey, my eyes got blurred too." And I've heard that with infrasound, like it can blur your vision.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know people that it's made sick, our Brandy and I's good friend, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, his Bigfoot encounter, like his girlfriend did get zapped. They were on a boat and it literally like knocked her into the water.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty incredible. And it just, I believe anything's possible with the paranormal. And I believe that they are considered a type of paranormal. To me, paranormal is not just ghost,
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard the term paraphysical, and I feel like that's what these creatures are. They're physical creatures, but paranormal as well.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's a good term. Paraphysical. I'll have to use that. That's about the best way I could explain it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. What's a place to go that's on your bucket list that you haven't been to investigate?
I want to go to the UP of Michigan. I definitely want to go to LBL. I want to go to the Pacific Northwest and a hot spot in Canada. I feel like somewhere in BC, Canada would just be amazing to go to, just because of scenery and there's a lot of strangeness that has come out of that area.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my bucket list, I would like to go to where Patterson Gimlin filmed. I think that would be a cool place to go.
Yeah, Bluff Creek, I think it's called.
Yep,
Yeah, that's not far away from the Sierra Nevadas or where Ron Moorhead got the vocalizations. It's not too far away from there.
Yeah. What about you, Brandy? What's on your bucket list?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I was born in Michigan and I was raised, you know, in my younger years there. And there were stories of Bigfoot, but I did never go looking for it. I never just thought, I mean, we played around in the woods like it was just nobody's business, you know. It is like now that I know what I know, I'm like, I'm surprised I'm alive.
Yeah.
I really am, because I've been up in the UP. I've been, you know, all over Michigan. And it's scary to know now. I mean, especially since Christian and I, we've had our experience. And I don't know. I don't know if I would be that free to do that again.
Yeah, absolutely. I've interviewed a lot of people from Michigan, and I get people in the comments that say, I've lived in Michigan my whole life. These things don't exist. I've never seen one, but it's like, now you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother still lives there. My brother lives in Michigan now. He doesn't live in the UP, but he doesn't live far from it, you know. And it's in the upper Michigan part. And he said there's a lot of weird things that are happening out there, that there have been people, you know, on their acreage out behind it and all this other kind of stuff, just checking it out and looking around. And he's like, So he finally tracked one down and asked them what they were doing, and they were talking about filming a documentary out there, looking for Sasquatch. So I was like, well, there it is. And he goes, well, that would make sense to everything that's happening out there. Because I asked him, I said, hey, are you even looking for prints or anything out there? He goes, no, not really.
Yeah.
Well, the top thing that I've found, excuse me, with the research is these creatures will follow the waterways. And if you zoom in on a map into Michigan, there's just lakes all over the place. Same with Minnesota. So they got waterways, and then there's the Great Lakes. It's like, okay, so that's like the granddaddy of waterways. That's why there's so many sightings there.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, there's just lakes about everywhere you go. There's, you know, a bunch of rivers, creeks, whatever. I mean, if they're following the food, they're going to follow the water source.
Yeah, and around like waterways, there's all kinds of like plant life, and it just seems to be where the animals want to go to. And I don't know, that's where the Native Americans live, so that's probably where the Sasquatch want to be in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that makes them feel more safe, or do you think that maybe they do have a higher sense of self? Maybe this is a sacred area for them, or something like that?
I think it's all the above. I mean, I think they feel safer there. There's always water and definitely food around. But I've noticed around the waterways, that's where the caves are. So they kind of got everything. And around the waterways, that's where the springs are, and that's fresh water.
What are your thoughts about, do you believe that they migrate?
I think some clans do. They'll migrate miles and miles to where some are like locals. They'll stay put. But it's the same way with people. Some people have lived in the same area their whole lives, and some people are constantly moving around. And I don't know. I feel like they're nomadic, like the Native Americans. They'll hang out in a certain area, and once they get once they drain it of like the food supply, and you know, their presence is given, like, you know, people are onto them, they'll move away.
Sure. Absolutely. We have our friend Pancho Zorches in chat. You had him on your show.
Yeah.
Yep, Pancho. Yeah, he had said hello to you earlier.
Okay.
Andrew. Yeah, that's Andrew.
Okay. Yeah. I know Andrew.
Yeah.
Good guy. Yeah. He'll be at the conference.
Really?
Right. Yeah.
Well, shout out to Andrew. I appreciate him.
Yeah, us too, most definitely. Now, how often do you actually get out into the woods? Because it seems like you're always dropping videos. You're out in the woods, and I'm jealous. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I just go back and forth from video editing, filming, and going in the woods. I mean, whenever I take breaks from work, I'll go walk out in the woods. Whenever I'm done with work for the day, I'll go walk around out in the woods at nighttime. It's just something I like to do. It took me a long time to be able to do that after I had my encounters. But after I started making these videos and camping, I slowly started putting my feet back in the water and testing it out. Now I feel comfortable and I'm walking around out there at nighttime. I think one thing that's really helped me out is getting night vision and thermal optics. Because I have the thermal, so where I hear something, I look and I'm like, okay, it was just an armadillo. But to where before I'd be like, back to the house.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Do you think that that these creatures, like, they can tell, like, thermal and they hide? Because people always talk about, blurry pictures and this and that. Do you think, like, they know that, so they don't want to be seen?
I think they know a camera is bad news. And I mean, I don't know what's going on in their mind, but they know it's not good. They're smart enough to avoid it. And no, maybe it's just a coincidence, or they know that, hey, that's a camera. Maybe that's a firearm. Like, they know it's not good. Like, they can tell you have something, and they know when you're vulnerable, when you're not ready. But at the same time, there are a lot of hunters out there with firearms that have encountered these things. And it's hard to say, because you often hear people say, like, oh, if you have a gun, you're never going to see one, or if you have a camera. But there's been people that have filmed them, and a majority of stories come from hunters and fishermen. So,
yeah, absolutely. And same thing.
I did have the theory, though, that with these cameras, these trail cams and everything like that, well, they're plastic. They can smell that. They can smell that from far away. They can smell us. And I think that maybe sometimes they just will show themselves to us because they want to, not because we caught them. I don't think we could ever sneak up on them. I don't think so.
Yeah. Whenever I'm out in the woods, like on state land, I'll see a camera. It sticks out like a sore thumb, so I just go around it. It's like, I don't want to be on someone's trail camera, but I mean, imagine these things. Like, you can just see it. Even if you put it up in the trees, like, it'd have to be hidden pretty darn well. But I mean, I think they can smell it, like you said. It probably puts off some type of frequency. And I don't know, they can just tell if something's different. I've heard of people saying that they're like savants, like, the woods is like their house. So, like, if you move something, they're going to notice it.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that, but yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Like I said, like, it's like if you walk into your house and you smell a strange smell, then you know that something's wrong, something's different. So you're going to find that. And I'm pretty sure that they're the same way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I would agree. I would wholeheartedly agree with you on that.
Yeah, my dog's the same way. Like, I'll have something new in the house, and like when I let him in, he runs up and he's like smelling it. And it's like, he can't see it. It's up on the counter, but he's just like,
he's smelling it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty. It's a strange place, a strange world we live in. It truly is.
Yeah, it really is. Once you think you've seen it all, you get hit with something new. It's just like, okay, I don't know.
Now what? How do I process this information? What does that mean to what I'm researching? Yeah, sometimes it's just a puzzle piece. You just kind of have to add it in and wait till later to see if you find another piece.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one question I often ask myself, like, how long am I going to be doing this, and will I ever actually get answers? And it's just something I struggle with. Like, am I ever going to see these things again? I bought all this equipment. Like, will I ever film one? Will I find something that nobody else has found? Like, when I'm researching areas, will I find like a Sasquatch body, or like the skeleton, like the remains? Like, I don't know. Or will I do this for the rest of my life and never come across anything and just look like a goober to everyone? I mean, we know that it's real, but
yeah.
and it doesn't matter to me like what people think, but I would like to bring some evidence to help people that, try to tell their families like, hey, I've seen this creature, and they just like laugh at them and say, what have you been smoking? Like, that sucks. And it sucks being isolated and not having anyone to talk to. Because like there are family members that are like, okay, I believe you, but in the back of their mind, they're like, oh my God, he's going crazy.
Yeah. And that's, Brandy and I's motto, be it paranormal, cryptid, UFO, when people talk about their encounters, we weren't there, and we've witnessed some pretty crazy things ourselves. So we never judge anybody or tell anybody that didn't happen to you, because we weren't there, so, and I know you're the same way. Like, you're non-judgmental, and you do have an open mind, when people do tell you their encounters.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the Mindspeak, and that was one thing that kept coming up in my research. Like, people would claim that they got zapped or something spoke to them in their mind. It's like, okay, this keeps coming up. I can't dismiss it. Like, I've seen Sasquatch and I feel alone. Imagine being zapped or having something talk in your mind. How would that make you feel? So I try to be there for those people.
Absolutely. My only concern, I do believe that these people are hearing something, when it comes to Mindspeak. However, doing ghost and the paranormal for so many years, negative entities are tricksters. So me personally, I want to hear a Bigfoot. I want to talk to a Bigfoot. Well, the other side knows that. So who's to say they're not going to portray themselves as a Bigfoot to get you to open yourself up to them? That's my concern.
Yeah, absolutely. The Bible talks about like entertaining angels, and you don't know that you're possibly like talking to an angel. It's like, well, if angels can look like a normal human being, what can a demon do? Like, what can an angel do? And I often wonder that with like dogmen and Bigfoot, especially like with the orbs, because they talk about like angels being beings of light, and we see these orbs moving through the woods. It's like, okay. I mean, you can't prove any of that, but the speculation is there for sure. It adds credibility to what the Bible says when you experience this. But again, it's something you can't prove, and it's just a theory.
Yep, absolutely. I know you have to hop away. You said you had an hour, and we appreciate you coming on here. Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can do another 20 minutes if you'd like.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, please.
Please.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, so that means a lot.
Yeah, that most definitely. I still want to, I will message you and talk to you privately about it, but I told you about that location, Brandy, and I have a private case.
Yeah, I remember
talking about that.
Yeah.
So we have a date, and I will send you a text message on that. Just, if you're interested in coming and doing a little research out there with us, we'd love to have you.
Okay. I mean, I'll definitely do research on the cryptid side of things, but the paranormal stuff, like I said, I got away from that a long time ago. I had some stuff attached to me that it took the wrath of God to get rid of it, and it doesn't happen anymore. But it got pretty scary there for a while.
Yeah, I understand wholeheartedly. And that weekend we're not actually there to do any of the ghosting.
Okay. Yeah.
We're strictly going, we're going to be in the
but it will be interesting. It will be interesting to know, because it is filled with the paranormal, how much of that will spill over into what we're looking for. If anything's out there, I'm just saying. That's what I'm curious about. It's because, we've been talking about how it's all intertwined. We just don't know exactly how yet. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll know until after we're all passed, and
yeah,
we finally reached that higher power. But I would like to at least figure out some of the puzzle. I keep going back to that, but I would like to at least find out some of that, just simple things about, are they running around in family units, or, how long does it take their offspring to grow, or, what's the gestational period, or, just those things. I mean, that's asking a lot, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is like an active Bigfoot area. Has there been sightings there or experiences?
So, funny story. It was on one of the big Dogman shows.
Mhm.
I heard an encounter and on a road that's right there, and I'll tell you all this exact locations off camera, but
Okay.
of a Dogman encounter. And so I nicknamed that road Dogman Road. Well,
Yes.
this location is less than 2 miles from there. So when Brandy and I were there last time, it was Brandy and myself and our friend Terry. And Terry was running an EVP session. And we got some sort of howl. I can't explain it. And I seen that Hellbent Holler was in chat, and I sent it to Joe, and he sent it back, and he said that, it's definitely something that's got a big, powerful lungs, not your average coyote or anything like that. And so I'll be happy to send it to you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and the people that own the place, they hear that quite often.
Mm-hmm. And we know it wasn't dogs. It didn't sound like a dog howl. We were hearing coyotes all night long, and I know what a coyote sounds like. It wasn't one of them. It had a deep guttural type of howl to it, which we know wolves are not indigenous to that area, so that didn't make any sense. So I'm still not sure of what that is. I've never heard anything like that in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know this is kind of strange, and it sounds like I always have stories, but earlier today, right before it got dark, I heard this canine howl. I'm not gonna say it was Dogman, but it sounded really deep and guttural. I just kind of brushed it off, and I was like, man, after I get back from my friend's place tonight, I'm gonna go check it out. But
yeah,
brought it
absolutely.
up.
Be safe.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was someone's dog, like a really big dog. I don't know.
You never know.
Yeah.
However, when we heard that, it was audible, but we also recorded it, and we're like, whoa, that we knew that wasn't somebody's dog.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most definitely.
I spent a lot of time in the woods, and it didn't sound like any animal I've heard ever.
Yes.
Ever.
Yes. There's a couple questions here. JD Smooth asks, do you think that Bigfoot and Dogmen hunt together?
I'm not really sure, but I have noticed that where people have Bigfoot encounters, those are the same areas that people have Dogman encounters. And that howl that I heard out here whenever I was like 11 or 12 years old, I heard that deep guttural werewolf howl. And then right at the end, it sounded like a woman screaming. So later on, I thought maybe it was like a Dogman that confronted a Bigfoot, but I don't know. I've heard people say that Dogman will scream like women too, like how the Sasquatch do that. I don't know. Maybe it was just a Dogman, but I feel like a Dogman ran into a Bigfoot. At the time, I didn't know what it was. Later on, I had my encounters. Then I learned about Dogman. And then I was like, holy crap, that's probably what that was out there that one night. But I've also heard from people that Dogman create structures too, like the tree structures, like the X's and the arches. So I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess my theory would be is I don't think they hunt together. I don't even think they hang around each other. I think they just kind of work around each other. They kind of keep their distance, but they're in the same area, but they kind of just shift and kind of stay away from each other. They know they're there, but I can't get rid of the feeling that they would know that if they got tangled up for a reason or two, one of them is not going to survive, and they know that.
Yeah, I feel like they're sworn enemies. It's hard to say, though. I just feel like they wouldn't like each other, and maybe they have their own different territory.
Maybe they tolerate?
Yeah, and sometimes they cross territories, and maybe that's like when there's issues. I don't know, really. Or if these things are coming from other portals and dimensions, like you'll find them in the same areas, but I don't know. I don't know, but that's my biggest fear is running into a dog man doing Bigfoot research.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
scary. Definitely scary.
I am fascinated by dogmen, but I don't really know if I want to run into one.
Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly. Would you mind? There's several people in chat have asked. Do you mind talking a little paranormal? Are you okay with that? Or
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
okay.
What do we want to talk about? Do you guys want to ask questions, or do you want me to tell you about some experiences?
I have two questions. Actually, it was the same question people asked. How did you get your attachment? What they want to know.
I feel like the attachment came from like living the rock star life. I used to be in a metal band, and we'd have band practice like multiple times a week, and you know we drank and we partied whenever we'd do all that. But that was one way. But I feel like watching paranormal shows let it in, because I noticed whenever I'd be watching these shows back in the day, it was in my earlier 20s, I'd be watching this show called like Taps and Ghost Hunt or Ghost Adventures, shows like that. And I'd be home alone. It'd be like 7 or 8 in the evening. I'd be watching these shows and they're having paranormal activity. And then all of a sudden stuff would happen in the house. And I'd be like, what the heck was that? I started noticing like these little lights, like I guess kind of like an orb, but they're like dime size. They'd like appear in the house and kind of like float around stuff. And I thought like, you know, there's something in my eye. Like I'm seeing something, and it kept happening like a lot. But
Was it super bright, like a pin light?
Yeah, like a little bitty star inside the house, like moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have those too. Okay.
Yeah, and it just kept happening. I'm like, I'm just seeing stuff. Like, because whenever I'd look, it'd be gone. But like I'd see it like my peripheral vision. And sometimes like I'd look, it'd be right there and just kind of like fade off. So I'd just be like, what the hell? But, I started like getting like disembodied voices. Like you'd hear people talking, but you couldn't make out the words. And it almost sounded like it was coming from like a tunnel, like or something. But at that time I had a Siberian Husky, and you know, I was thinking I was going crazy. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting like schizophrenia or something. But I noticed whenever I had the activity, like where I was hearing it, my dog would be looking too. And I was like, thank God I got this dog, or else I'd be thinking I was going nuts. But one time I just ordered this Alienware gaming computer, and it came in a giant box. Like it's a Dell computer, so it was a huge box. You would think there was in it, but I had it in my kitchen because I just opened it up that day, and I was sitting there on my old computer just relaxing and surfing the web, and like it sounded like something kicked that box with like a cowboy boot. Like somebody kicked it as hard as they could, and my dog like did like a rodeo jump because he was like balled up. He was like in a little ball sleeping, like it was like tucked into his tail, and he was snoozing away. But like whenever it kicked that box, like he jumped up like, I would say like 6 feet, not 6 feet, like 4 or 5 feet in the air. I've never seen him do that. But when he jumped up, he was just like looking, his hairs were standing up, and he was looking. So I was like, oh my God, like that was the scariest thing ever. But I think what really opened up the doorway was my curiosity. Like I said, watching these shows, I downloaded this app on my phone, and oh man, I can't remember what it was, but like some type of talk thing. Like you would talk and it would like say words. But after like I was experiencing a lot of activity, it was a Sunday morning, and it was a bright, sunny morning, beautiful morning. And I was testing these spirits. Like, is there actually something in here? So I was walking around the house, and it was like living room. And I was in my living room. I was like, okay, you know, that could have been random. Then I was like, what color are my walls? And it was like brown. I was like, okay, that's pretty accurate. And I walked through the kitchen into the dining room, and then you could see like the beams of sunlight coming through the sliding glass door, and you could hear the birds chirping outside. And then it goes, nature, beautiful. And I was like, okay, that's pretty darn accurate. And then I walk by my guitars and it goes music. I was like, okay. And then I asked it, what color are your eyes? And it said black. And I just shut it off. Like I shut that app down. It freaked me out. Like, yeah. I feel like doing that type of stuff let it in, and it was really hard to close that door.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Things started getting pretty scary.
Yeah, they say, don't ever, I never encourage anybody to like do EVPs or anything like that in their own home. Never. And even like, what we do, with the recorders and things like that, like Brandy, she's the one that listens to all that. But like that could be even opening up her place, and just listening to try to see if there's, an EVP or whatever on there. So
yeah, absolutely. If I told you all my paranormal experiences, I bet it would be a 4-hour long podcast. Like that's how much stuff has happened.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I'm and it's not for everybody, that's for sure. And my thing is I do this to help people. It's not for my enjoyment, honestly. It's to help people. That's why I continue to do the paranormal side of things. It's definitely not what the TV say. It's not sitting in a room and everything's going crazy and you sit in that room for a long time and nothing's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I got another paranormal encounter if you want to hear about it, and it's another reason why I think certain things let them come into your life. But me and my family, we would go to Mexico every year, and this was in December. And I was probably like 15 or 16 years old. And that day, my family, they were gone for the day. And I was home alone. So I was bored the whole day. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go into the market because we kind of live a little bit outside town, but you can see the whole city down below. And I went into the market that day just to have something to do. But I came across a stand where this guy had a bunch of like torrented like DVDs, and they're like new movies, like movies that were still in theaters here in the US were out on DVD in Mexico. But I ended up buying like 4 different horror films, and one of them was The Exorcism of Emily Rose. So whenever I got home, I started watching that movie, and I was home alone watching it. And I got like halfway through the movie when the Catholic priest was doing the exorcism, and it was scary as hell. But I was sitting there watching that, and he's like trying to get this demon out of this girl, and she's like speaking Latin and doing things that are physically impossible. And that's how you know someone has a demon. Like there's a difference between spiritual warfare, like seeing ghosts and hearing ghosts in your house, to actually having a demon. Like just because you're having paranormal activity, that doesn't mean you're demonically possessed. There has to be certain things for a person to fit that criteria. And it's like speaking different languages, knowing things that no human being could know, doing things that are physically impossible to do. That's how you know someone's like actually possessed. But anyways, he gets to the part where he's trying to drive this demon out of the girl in the film, and all of a sudden the power goes out in the house, just pitch black. Oh, wow. Yeah. And I'm upstairs on the 2nd floor, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is scary. Okay. The power went out. That's random. Okay. I didn't think anything. So like I'm walking, feeling the walls, trying to find my way out of this room. Then I'm going down the hallway, and I'm still feeling the walls. I'm going down the stairs, and I just got my hands on the walls because it's that dark inside the house. And I get down to like the living room in the downstairs, and I go through the hallway and then out the front door. And you can see outside in the yard because there's like a dusk to dawn light out there and like a street light. So you can see in the yard. And all of a sudden I see this jet black hole in the ground. And I'm like staring at it. I'm like, what is that? And all of a sudden this figure like rises up out of that hole.
Wow.
In a crouch position, but it's a shadow person, and he's about 6 foot tall, maybe a little taller. And it looked like a mannequin. Like the shape of this being was like the Silver Surfer, but ink black. It was 3D. It wasn't like a mist or anything like that. It was like something physical, but it stood up in slow motion, and it stood like right there face to face with me. And I was overwhelmed with fear. Like, I didn't know what to do, what to think, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And one detail I forgot to give was whenever I stepped out that door into the yard, this black cat ran in front of me, and he goes, wow, like he was terrified. So I jumped back and I'm like, oh my God, it was just a cat. Forgot to mention that part. And then I took a few more steps, and that's when I saw the black hole. And it looked like a black hole, like what you would see in space, like you see in those documentaries. That's what it looked like in the ground. And this thing stood up out of it, like an evil villain that just landed on planet Earth. Like he like stood up in slow motion. And I don't know, we were face to face, fight or flight kicked in, and I took off running like a little kid, like I was gone, because I couldn't stand being in front of this creature. Like I couldn't take it. And my family had they had a house, and there's a street, and they had another house on the other side of the street, and that's where my aunt and uncle lived. My dad let him rent it out, but I ran over there, and by this point in time, they were home, and they were in there drinking tea, and I was like, someone's breaking into the house. I knew somewhat of like what it was, but I didn't want to tell them there's a demon over there. So I just told them like someone's breaking in. So they'd come over and check it out. They got up immediately and like took off running to see who was there, because like in Mexico, people will rob you. Like they'll even steal like the tires off your vehicle. Like you have to keep everything locked up. But there was no one there when we all ran back, and I never told them what it was because I didn't want them to think I was crazy. And
wow.
Yeah, the strange part about that, when the trip ended and we were driving back through like Nuevo Laredo and back into Texas and Oklahoma, I just felt off. Like I felt like I had like really bad anxiety. I don't know how to explain it. Like I felt off. Like something was removed from me that day. I don't know how to explain it. Like the light was dimmed in my soul, and it came back. People always say, like, I never see you smile. That's a reason why. Like, just something. I lost something that day.
Yeah. Wow. How scary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely. It sounds like you something attached itself without a doubt.
Yeah, and I feel like watching those films lets it in, and I was reading like on Reddit or something, a lot of people were talking about that with like that same movie, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. People were claiming that they were having like paranormal activity happen when they'd watch it. And I read like what the cast said about that movie, and apparently like they were having like really bad stuff happen, the people that filmed that movie. Mm-hmm. And I heard the same thing with like The Passion of the Christ. Like the people that made that movie were having like they were being attacked.
Same thing with the Exorcist movie.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't watch those movies anymore. Like I can't. And I've tried to warn people who watch these movies, and like they'll roll their eyes and say, Miguel, I know what I'm doing. I'm fine. Mm-hmm. Same people have had like shadow people in their house afterwards, and they still won't say that I was right. And it's not like I just want to be right, but I did warn them. Mm-hmm. But they still don't think I'm right. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. You can definitely open up doors, just by watching this stuff. And, there's a guy on YouTube that I follow. He's a ghost guy, and he goes to all these haunted locations. And he's been to some more on the negative side of locations. And he's got a warning in the beginning of his shows, like, hey, by watching this, you are possibly can get, an attachment. So 100% it's there.
Yeah, for sure. Seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open. And that was one strange thing with like Bigfoot too. I had this experience where me and my ex-girlfriend were camping at the river, and we were talking about the show Finding Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And there, because the night before that, we saw an episode from Missouri, and I think it was like from Mountain View or West Plains, Missouri. And we are like, wow, can you believe there's Bigfoot activity here in Missouri? Do you really believe in that? And we're like, I don't know. She's like, my uncle's seen one. He swears he's seen one. She said it followed tracks in the snow for miles, and he finally caught up to it, and he shot at the creature, and it turned around and screamed at him. And I was like, wow, yeah, maybe they are here in Missouri. So I went to my Mercury Mountaineer, and I pulled out this Nike baseball bat, and I hit a tree. Boom, loud wood knock, and I did a whoop just like they do on the show. And even her son was doing like whoops, like he was like mimicking what I was doing. And I mean, we were just having a good time. And then all of a sudden across the river, this giant tree just comes crashing down. Boom. I mean, you could hear like limbs and everything cracking and snapping as this giant tree comes down, and you could feel the boom. And there was zero wind that day. It was a beautiful summer day. We just looked at each other like, that's weird. Like that happened right as we're doing the wood knocks and whoops. We didn't think anything of it. I didn't know it pushed over trees. We were just like, that's weird. And right when it got dark, all the floaters that were on the river that day like cleared off. We had that fire going, and we're like, that's pretty weird. That tree fell over whenever we were doing the calls and wood knocks. And then, I don't know, it was maybe like 20 minutes after that, something behind us screamed. And I mean, it was loud and powerful. Like I said earlier, it sounded like something off Jurassic Park. And our eyes are just like bulging out of our head. She's like, grab your gun, grab your gun. At the time I had a Glock 19, and it was chambered in 9, and I was just like, I didn't grab it because I was in shock, and I felt like if I did, like whatever that is going to come into camp and tear us apart. I just got that feeling like, oh my gosh, what is that? Because the vocalization came like 9 feet off the ground, and my rational mind told me that was probably a mountain lion that climbed up into a tree and screamed at us because it was mad that we were in the area. But we had a fire going on. We were there all day. It just didn't make sense for that. And I didn't know that it was Bigfoot. But the strange part is we were talking about Bigfoot, and it happened. And I heard, like later on after doing this research, I heard the Native Americans say the same thing. They're like, if you talk about it, they will show up. Like, you don't talk about it. And it's like, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And I believe like you can manifest too.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like they followed me home after that. I started having like activity where I lived at. And this, like where I did live at, was right in between I-44 and Highway 66. And there's like a couple hundred yards in between the interstate and the highway. I mean, there's like woods in there and farms, but it's just like I was having Bigfoot activity in an area that no one would ever think these creatures would be at.
Yeah, I absolutely believe. I mean, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but that a dogman was even seen around St. Louis Arch. Yeah,
I heard about that, and I don't know, that blows my mind. I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I believe any of these creatures can be anywhere. It doesn't matter if you live in the city or if you live in the suburbs or in the country.
Yeah, I took a dogman report from a populated area in California, and this was actually from a famous baseball player. He didn't want me to give out the name, so I never did in the podcast. But everyone was claiming that their dogs were going missing, and like one night, this dogman like crawled up the wall. I guess there was like a concrete wall around this like development, and it like dropped into like his backyard, and he saw it clear as day. So I mean, you can see a cryptid creature in an area where there's no trees or woods.
Absolutely.
We do have an interesting question. And I know this, and not everybody does. But the question is, by chance, was Miguel born with a veil?
I don't know what that is.
Okay. Sometimes children are born and it appears to have a black veil over their head, which is, just part of the afterbirth and things like that. But it is a veil. And they say that people born with these veils have second sight or something else that would make them more susceptible to see these paranormal things. And that's why I was asking. It's an old wives' tale, but from what I understand and from the people I know, which are very few that have had that, they do have interesting abilities.
Yeah, I've wondered that. I used to think like maybe I was born with a gift. Then I was thinking it was a curse. Then later on, I learned that it's like spiritual warfare. I don't really know, but that's the one thing that blows my mind the most is like, okay, I've had hardcore paranormal activity. I've seen UFOs. I've seen a gray alien, and I've seen cryptid creatures. And I don't know. Like that's the one thing that I can't wrap my mind around. And a lot of people always ask me like, this is a Bigfoot channel. Why are you talking about paranormal? But it's like they don't understand. Like,
right.
I've had all that stuff happen, so I feel like it's only fair to talk about it all. And I started asking my guests that question instead of like asking like, what do you think Bigfoot is? I started asking them like, have you ever had a UFO experience or paranormal activity? And like 90% of them, if not more, say, yeah, actually I have. Most of the people that have seen a cryptid creature have also seen a shadow person or had like they've lived in a haunted house or whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know, I feel like a lot of the people that the BFRO has interviewed, they have these stories, but they're like, I'm not going to tell these people, you know, that I've ghost encounters too. And I don't think they can ask, but something I do ask.
Yeah. So Amelia, she talks about, you know, when she has a veil too, and she's airborne. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's just that you're more open to all of these things, you know, as you just said, you've seen all of these things, you know, where most people have just seen a Bigfoot, not everything.
Yeah, it could be. And yeah, I've had strange experiences throughout my life, and I don't know.
Definitely interesting. We're going to have to get you back on to talk about some UFO.
Yeah, whatever you guys want to do. I mean, I had a great time talking with you both, and yeah.
We definitely appreciate you coming on because, you know, like I said, you're a great guy. We're fans of your show. Excuse me. I suggest everybody who is not subscribed to Sasquatch Theory to subscribe for sure. And I've been dropping the link in chat, and I'll do it again. And then it's also in the description of the show. And you can come and meet Miguel at our conference.
Yes. Remember, September 19th and 20th. And on our way out, Krista will play our exit and our little preview of what's to come. And I guess we can call it now. I think we've left enough for another time for another visit from Miguel, which will be awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. So this has been a lot of fun, and you're very knowledgeable on all of this subject. Sure.
I like how open you are to all of it.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yep. So everybody tune in. We'll be on tomorrow night. And once again, thank you, Miguel. And thank you to Keith for becoming a new member. Amelia, thank you for being a new member. Nunya Biz, appreciate that.
I love that name.
And thank you. And Aaron's, thank you very much. Appreciate it, everyone. And until tomorrow night, we will see y'all later. Good night.
This is the future. Evolution.
The Crossing Realms Conference launches September 19th and 20th and will dock in Richmond, Missouri. This is already being called the event of the year, folks, with an unprecedented list of speakers and special guests, 2 days of cryptids, UFOs, and paranormal presentations, along with a celebrity-filled ghost hunt, meet and greet, gallery reading, vendors, and a film screening. This promises to be both educational and fun. Go to Eventbrite.com to secure your tickets and vendor slots before they are all abducted. They're going fast.